Good morning, guys. Happy, I'm recording this on Tuesday. Happy assembly. I hope you're all okay. In assemblies just recently, we've looked at the things that you need to kind of get your body ready, get your mind ready for the day. We've talked about the importance of sleep and rest. And we've talked about the importance of getting up and getting going at the right time, so you're on time. Now remember, school starts at 8:55, and there's a lot of people who kind of trickle in 9 o'clock, 9:05. So we need to be ready so that you're there for the start of the day. Now today, we're going to think about another one of those things that your body needs to get you ready for learning, and that is a good breakfast. So, quick question. Put your hand up if you have had breakfast today. Put your hand up if you have had toast. Put your hand up if you've had cereal. Put your hand up if you've had some fruit. Put your hand up if you've had something cooked, like eggs or bacon or something like that. Okay, lots of people. Well, that's really good because that fuels your body. And it means that if your body is working well, your brain is part of your body and you are able to learn and you're able to do all the things that you need to do. So I've got another story about a girl called Sabahat. Sabahat didn't eat her breakfast, and as a result, she couldn't concentrate in school. So let's see what happens. Now, Sabahat was such a helpful, kind girl. Everyone said so. Neighbours, teachers, friends, and she got a lot of friends. And most of all, the family, especially her mum. Sabahat was the oldest. She was 9. She got one brother, Aslan, who was in the infants, and baby Malika, who was just beginning to crawl. Sabahat's dad was a plumber. He was always very busy, and sometimes he was called out at night when people had leaks or problems with their plumbing. Sabahat's mum was different, though. She had an accident in the car when she was first married and now had to use a wheelchair all the time because she damaged her back. It made life just a bit difficult sometimes, but Sabahat loved her mum to bits. And more than anything, she loved helping her mum. In fact, Sabahat was a young carer and took on a lot of extra work as a result. So Sabahat would help with all the housework. She was really good at cleaning and looking after her brother and the baby. And because her mum found it difficult to move around, Sabahat became her hands and feet, fetching and carrying, lifting and moving, because she knew that her mum couldn't do it. It became second nature for her to do the things her mum couldn't do. Thank you, Sabahat, said her mum as Sabahat laid the table for breakfast. Aslan was just getting ready for school and Sabahat made his favourite breakfast, porridge. Oh, I forgot to ask about porridge. Does anybody have porridge for breakfast? Love porridge. She used the microwave because it only took a few minutes, and she put some in a bowl for him and also put out a bowl for herself, then poured a glass of milk. Finally, Sabahat picked up the baby, sat her in the high chair so that mum could feed her. Sabahat dashed upstairs to check that Aslan was washed and dressed and made their beds. Mornings were always very busy, and by the time she'd finally got Aslan ready, there wasn't any time for her to eat anything. So she scraped her cold porridge into the bin, quickly grabbed her school bag, kissed her mum before she set off down the pavement with Aslan. It wasn't far to walk. Breeze Street Primary School was only 5 minutes away, and only one road to cross. Sabahat loved school. She loved all her teachers. She had lots and lots of friends. Remember, I told you she was so kind and helpful that everyone thought she was great. She was a real carer in every sense of the word. The problem was that no one seemed to notice that Sabahat was actually finding things quite difficult and getting more and more miserable as a result. She was so busy helping everyone else that she wasn't doing a very simple thing in the morning. She wasn't taking time to have a good breakfast. She simply didn't have the energy to work properly. By break time, Sabahat's tummy was rumbling and she was really looking forward to her lunch. Now, after playtime, it was English. Sabahat loved stories, but she found reading a bit hard. And whenever she had to write anything, she had to really concentrate on the spelling. She just couldn't remember the spelling rules, even though she'd done them over and over again. Mrs. Brown was explaining to the class about the activity. They were going to do some writing that was part of their history topic about the Romans. Sabahat listened carefully, then put up her hand to help giving out the workbooks. Then she sat down in a place, started to think about what she was going to write. But you've all felt like this sometimes. The ideas just didn't seem to be there. She couldn't think how she could start. It was terrible. Mrs. Brown was walking around the class helping when she noticed that Sabahat hadn't written anything down. Come on, Sabahat, she said encouragingly. Let's work out what you want to say. She sat down with Sabahat and helped her organise some planning notes. Sabahat worked slowly through the notes. The words just didn't seem to be there. She started a sentence but couldn't think how to end it. By 12 o'clock, she'd only written half a page. Mrs. Brown came round the class looking at everyone's work and collecting in the books. But when she came to Sabahat, she shook her head. Oh dear, Sabahat, I think you'll have to stay behind with me for 10 minutes to try and catch up. This just isn't enough work. And I know you can do better. Right, boys and girls, off you go to lunch. Mrs. Brown went back to her desk with the books and started to look through them. Sabahat sat in her seat with her head down. She felt really miserable, and before she could stop it, a big tear ran down her nose and plopped on the page. It was followed by another and another, and soon she couldn't stop herself crying. Mrs. Brown looked up and came over straight away. Oh dear, Sabahat, whatever is the matter? It's not like you to be upset like this. Come and have a chat with me. Sabahat really liked Mrs. Brown, and soon the story all came spilling out. And at the end, Sabahat confessed about how hungry she was because she hadn't had time for her own breakfast. Well, I'm not surprised you're finding it hard to work, said Mrs. Brown. It's probably 18 hours since you've had anything to eat. You've simply run out of fuel. Just like cars won't run without fuel, humans can't work without food. I understand how much you care for your mum, but you're too busy looking after everyone else and you've forgotten to look after yourself. So let's start by putting in some fuel now. School dinners are always good, healthy choices. I'm also going to have a word with your mum. I know you enjoy helping her at home, but sometimes you've got to look after yourself as well. What would your mum do if you were ill just because you didn't bother to eat breakfast? Mrs. Brown took Sabahat down to the school hall and soon had her organised with a tray of food. Sabahat's friends made a space for her, and soon she began to feel like her old self again. In the afternoon, Sabahat could feel Mrs. Brown looking at her occasionally and knew that her teacher was just making sure that she was okay. It made Sabahat feel better now that she'd explained and shared the problem. She was just a bit worried about her mum. How would she manage if Sabahat stopped helping? At the end of the day, Sabahat collected her brother from his class and walked him home. She was allowed to take him through the park on the way home, and a real treat for Aslan was to be pushed on the swings. Higher, higher, he shouted. Come on, Sabahat, right up to the sky. Sabahat smiled. Aslan was having such a lot of fun, so she pushed him as hard as she could. He was almost helpless with giggles when she stopped and made no protest when she said it was time to go home. As she opened the kitchen door, imagine Sabahat's surprise when she saw Mrs. Brown sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea in her hand. Her mum looked up and gave Sabahat a big smile. Well, I'm sure your ears must have been burning because we've been talking about you quite a bit. Mrs. Brown tells me you're so helpful at school and that you're trying very hard, but we've been thinking about how to find a way to make your life a bit easier. I didn't realize you were so busy in the morning and that you weren't eating any breakfast. From now on, we're going to change our routine a little bit. And Mrs. Brown has been speaking with a special support group called Family Action. They help families like ours, and I've been offered a little more help with the housework. Someone will come in every day now to make all the beds so you don't have to do it. And from now on, we're going to make sure you get a proper breakfast every day. Sabahat went over to her mum and gave her a big hug. Everything was going to be all right, and she didn't need to worry. They'd all manage. Sabahat smiled at Mrs. Brown. Thank you for helping, she said. Would you like me to make you another cup of tea? Mrs. Brown and Sabahat's mum both started to laugh. You're doing it again, Sabahat. We both know how you love to help, said Mrs. Brown. But why don't you just sit down and let me make it? So, two really important messages. Number one is breakfast is really important. It's fuel for the day. Number two, there is always somebody in school that you can talk to. If you're bothered about something, if you want to talk about something that's going on at home, you can always talk to any of the adults in school. We will always take some time to listen to you and to do our best to help. Right, it's a beautiful sunny day today. It's going to be lovely and warm. I hope you've got a water bottle with you because it's important to keep hydrated as well as to have breakfast. And I will see you around school. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.